Welcome to Dominate Your Day, the podcast for corporate leaders, visionaries, and founders who are ready to lead from within. I'm Dana Williams, and after 25 years as a corporate leader myself, I've discovered a powerful truth. The next level of your leadership isn't about more doing, it's about more being. Today, you'll hear from a difference maker who's learned that everything they needed to transform their team and their organization was already within them. They've stopped chasing external validation and started leading from their authentic strengths, purposes, and values. This is what I call the internal revolution. And it's the foundation of my book, Internal Revolution: Lead Authentically and Build Your Personal Brand from Within. It's now available on Amazon. Let's dive in. I have a special guest with us today, Dr. Tim Elmore. He's founder of Growing Leaders. It's an Atlanta-based nonprofit organization created to develop emerging leaders. So I'm passionate about leaders, Tim is passionate about leaders, and I can't wait to get this conversation going. So welcome, Tim, to Dominate Your Day.
Thanks, Dana. Always good to be with you. We've had a few conversations, and we are cut out of the same cloth, I think.
Yes, and I don't know what it is, but there's something about just a passion. How did this passion for leadership
Yeah,
start for
yeah.
you? Where did that come from?
I tell you, it was two things. One, I started teaching in the classroom, believe it or not, in the last century, in the 1979, 1980 school year. So I've been around a
Uh-huh.
long time. But I really fell in love with the next generation. I was the next generation, but as a young teacher, I thought, this is where I want to give my life, to young people. Fast forward 4 years, I went on staff with John Maxwell, and John is this leadership guru. And so my love of young people and my love of leadership got married. And so by
Mm.
the 1990s, I was really focusing not just helping kids graduate and stay off drugs, but actually be leaders. And so in 2003, over 20 years ago now, I started Growing Leaders, which is all about equipping the next generation to take their place as leaders in this world. So that's kind of summarizing my life in a nutshell.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was way back then, but then you were probably at that point were you working with millennials then, or were they even ready for,
Nothing yet. So
yeah.
I started looking at and studying generations way back in 1988. So I don't know how many years ago, 35, 36, 37
Mm-hmm.
years ago. Gen Xers were just now the new kids on the block. And
Mm.
ooh, they're different than boomers. What's going on here? They're wanting
Yeah.
authenticity. But then by the turn of the century, we were beginning to talk about millennials. And now the oldest millennials are in midlife.
Which is
So it's
crazy.
Gen Zers that are kind of the new kids on the block now, that are gracing our workplaces, and they're coming in hot and different. And so a lot of bosses or hiring managers are a little more frustrated than fascinated, may I
Mhm.
say that, with these
Mhm.
different kids. And we forget that, Dana, all down through history, clear back to Socrates, we've been saying, kids today, kids today.
Yeah.
And one day we were those kids, and now we're the older people saying that. So
It's
anyway.
so interesting. So you've written like 40 books. That is amazing. And this new book that's getting ready to come out, The Future Begins with Z. Can you tell us what inspired that? Was it that inspiration from way back when? And then now you're just trying to get the information that you've been studying out there in a way that leaders can digest it? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I do think there's a little of that. I'm always wanting to keep leaders informed about this newest team member coming on the team.
Mm.
However, I just began to talk to so many employers, leaders, who were frustrated at how different these kids are. Here's a few examples. The young people right out of college were coming in either a little bit audacious, like they're asking for way more money than
Mhm.
you might think you deserve,
Yes.
or they're coming in um, just unready, like
Mm.
unprofessional, wearing flip flops to the job interview. I've talked to
Mhm.
bosses that said, I interviewed somebody on Zoom and they didn't even turn their camera on. And when they did, they were in their pajamas. And you're going, are you serious about this job? Um,
Yeah.
so, not everyone, for sure, but enough of that was happening that I began to dig. And I found the research showed 3 out of 4 managers say that leading Gen Z is the toughest generation in the workplace. I think because they're just different. And
Mm.
30% are firing them within the first week of their employment.
Oh
So
my
I thought
gosh.
somebody needs to step forward. I don't know that I'm the only one. In fact, I'm sure I'm not, but I wanted to create a resource. The future begins with Z, is what I call it,
Hmm.
that provides a how do we onboard them? How do we retain them? How do we motivate? How do we have that hard conversation and offer firm feedback if they're fragile? So that was my
Mm.
goal. It's a guidebook to help somebody keep them and lead them well.
Wow. So, what in your research, I know that you've kind of talked about
Yeah.
strategies
Yeah.
that you've identified, and what are the strategies that you would give our audience today that would help that they could get in this book? And they go deeper in the book, but
Yeah. Yeah.
what are the strategies you want to make sure that people walk away with after they read your book?
Okay. Well, I think there's a major nugget I share in chapter 1 that it would be great to start with.
Okay.
I believe that Generation Z enters their adult life in what I call the Peter Pan paradox. Now, that's a big
Mm.
word. Let me explain.
Yeah.
Most of us are familiar with the story of Peter Pan. Disney made a movie about Peter Pan, and it was a play and it was a book. But if you remember the character of Peter Pan, he was
Yes.
this wild, flying boy that could fly all over the place. That's kind of magical.
Hmm.
And drop pixie dust on everything and just make magical things happen. At the same time, if you remember, Peter Pan never wanted to grow up. He wanted to live in Neverland and never
Hmm.
really have to grow up. So does this sound familiar?
Yeah.
So something magic and tragic is happening in culture today with young people.
Mm.
They do bring pixie dust. The Peter Pan paradox is this. Here it is in one sentence. The age of authority is decreasing, meaning they're coming and knowing things we don't know with experiences on social media and AI that
Mhm.
they're intuitive about the future.
Mm.
But the age of maturity is increasing.
Mm.
I've lost count of the number of employers or deans at universities that tell us 26 is the new 18.
Oh my gosh.
What we once expected 18, you're a woman now, you're a man now, let's get responsible, etc.
Mhm.
It's now happening later. So you can see how this would be frustrating. They know so much, darn it, but they don't seem socially and emotionally ready for professional life in the workplace. You can see we reach an impasse, and instead of getting curious, we get furious and we let them go before they had a chance. Yeah.
Do you think that would have happened regardless if we had had the pandemic or not? Do you think that maturity
Ugh.
would have been there?
No, I don't. But I think the pandemic accelerated what we're seeing. Yeah. In other words,
Mm.
already in 2015, 2016, 2019, we were already seeing signs. And part of it is if they're on social media and they're in their own echo chamber of people on TikTok or whatever, they may be in a fundamentally different world than the one we're in, as
Mhm.
people that are in midlife, let's say. So I think there was a gap, a generation gap. But let me tell you something else that maybe more than you bargained for here. I just was researching something that did not make the book, but I think it added to the challenge. 100 years ago, childhood looked very different. In fact, children were working jobs.
Yeah.
You either worked the
Oh,
farm with Uncle Bob and your
yeah.
dad, or you were in factories and so forth. In fact, so much so that by 1936, President Roosevelt passed child labor laws to protect children from abusive situations at work, and that was all
Mm.
good. However,
Mhm.
the downside of that was children now are almost always focused on academics and not work in their childhood or sports and not work. So they might graduate into a world of work where they've never had a full time job. It's always been
Mm.
the classroom, not the workroom. So you can see why a boss would go, "Do you not know how to do teamwork here, Josh?"
Mm.
And they would go, "No, I don't. I've been on my
Mm.
phone, or I've been on Netflix, or I've been on YouTube, or I've been on TikTok." So I don't mean to stereotype, please forgive me.
No.
But I
No.
think we're going to have to, well, here's what I say about the Peter Pan paradox. Because it exists, we're going to have to listen to them more than we used to listen, but we're going to have to coach them more than we used to coach.
Mm. Tell me, do you have a story right now? And I know this generation is
Yeah,
just really starting to merge into
yeah,
the
yeah.
workplace. It could be with this generation, it could be with millennials, but
Yeah.
maybe where a gap led to a breakthrough. Maybe it was
Okay, yeah,
innovation
yeah.
or a challenge in an organization that
Yes,
kind of
yeah.
comes on for you.
Well, the first story I tell in the book is Colin Webb. I've known Colin since he was in high school some years ago. He was so smart that he went off to MIT. So,
Wow.
and he was in student government all 4 years, made good grades. So you can imagine, Dana, when he graduated, he had
Mm.
several job offers.
Oh, I
He
bet.
decided to go to one of the big three in Detroit, Michigan, General Motors, GM, and work for this automaker. And he was put in the smart car division. So smart kid, smart cars.
Hmm.
Well, as Colin shows up, remember the Peter Pan paradox, he sees some things that could be updated and upgraded. He sees that professional development could be done better. He sees that this system could be better and that strategy could be better. So at 22, 23 years old, he starts offering these ideas to his supervisor. Well, you can imagine that went over like a lead balloon.
Mm.
So the supervisor says, "Hey, son, you just need to keep your nose to the grindstone, do your work, and be quiet." Well, Colin said, "Yes, sir," but he went back to his desk and he thought, "But these ideas are good." So get
Mm.
this. This is the audacity of Gen Z.
Mhm.
He sends an email to the CEO of General Motors,
Oh, I
Mary
love
Barr.
it.
He says,
Oh my
"Mary,
God.
I'm Colin Webb. I just started here. Here's some ideas I've got." Well, Mary gets back to him and says, "These are really good ideas." So she says, "Let me take them to my executive team." So Mary takes them to her executive team. They all go, "These are good ideas." But Dana, by the time they make it down the org chart to the middle manager and the supervisor, as you can imagine, they die on the vine. And his supervisor once again says, "Colin, you just need to do your work." In fact, he said, "You have to be around here 8 years before you get to lead anything."
Mm.
So by the time the year was over, Colin quit GM. I think they lost a gem. And he's now started three companies, sold one of them,
Wow.
doing quite well. But I'm thinking, oh, there was a miss on two
Mhm.
parts there. Colin could have
Mhm.
stayed and made that well established company better, but he was such an entrepreneur, and there was no room for any kind of entrepreneurial spirit, it seemed like to him, that he ended up doing his own thing. So that
Ah,
was a miss. I do think
yeah.
there are companies that get it, but you know why they're getting it? They're creating an entrepreneurial zone within their company. So we all have the products and services we offer, but they've
Mhm.
got a zone set up for these young entrepreneurs that know that this company is well funded, so we're not out of money, but we can do some new ventures that feel like it's a startup. And
Who's doing that now? Are there some companies right now that are doing some best practices that you would recommend, that you're seeing when you talk about this entrepreneurial zone? I always like about thinking about yourself as the entrepreneur,
yeah,
the intrapreneur inside
yes,
a larger
yes.
company.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Good
Yeah.
term. So Ken Blanchard has got stuff going. He's now not involved, but his company so well has this entrepreneurial zone. I think Netflix, I know that's a big brand,
Yeah.
but I think they continue to make room for young thinking and entrepreneurial thinking at their Reed Hastings wrote that great book called No Rules Rules, but
Mm.
they just here we go. Let's hang
Mhm.
on to your hats.
Mhm.
Those would be companies that come to mind right away. In the book, I do list some bosses and leaders that got this right, but
Mm.
far too often they're like maybe like me that just so have fallen in love with the way we've done things that we're not really open to maybe a new idea coming
Mhm.
from a Colin Webb who's 1 year into the journey. Yeah.
Those are the people we really want to, I mean, we want to help get to this next
Yes. Yeah.
stage. And I think a way that I see, even working a lot with, I do with the Gallup research, is it's the new workplace.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is, and I think it's really, oh, you don't, how do you manage as a leader? You know this, Tim, you've been working with leaders for years What is your recommendation to work with the different
Yeah,
generations?
yeah.
And what have you seen that works?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind as you were talking, I was thinking this. I think we're going to have to be better and better and better at managing by objective.
Mm,
So when we give a
mhm,
task to a young person, we often say, well, now let me tell you, I've been around here a long time. Here's the 7 steps you must take to do this task. What if we said,
mhm,
we're going to hold sacred the outcome? Here's the results we're wanting.
mhm,
Go after it however you want to. Now, not literally, because we may have to give them a little guidance, but I'm telling you, they will surprise us.
mm.
I'm
I love that.
thinking of a young man named David who was a part of my generation way back in 1975. He worked at Kodak. Remember Kodak?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it takes us back to the 20th century.
Oh, yeah.
He, this young man, David, at 25 years old, came up with the first digital camera. He took it to his bosses at Kodak and they said, nah, that will cannibalize our film
Mm,
and development and so forth. And so never saw the light of day.
mm,
Well, Kodak is now considering bankruptcy, I think now, if they've not already gone bankrupt,
mm,
because they didn't repurpose and say, if the objective is sell the next best camera, then they would have adopted his new idea. But they
mm,
wanted to hold on to this is the way we do it. Think about Blockbuster Video.
mhm,
We've all heard this story, but Reed
mhm,
Hastings, the founder of Netflix, took the Netflix idea to Blockbuster and said, "Hey, you should do this." And they go, "Nah,
mm.
we got video cassettes," and so
Yeah.
that became the end of them. So anyway,
So yeah, so I think what we have right now in the workplace is we've got the hybrid situation going on. We've got the different 5 generations at work,
yes, yes, we do.
and every one of them are very important and very
Yes,
valued.
yes,
And have you found, like, I like using strengths or find a tool that is really looking at the uniqueness of each person instead of, oh, they're in that generation or they're, have you found frameworks and things you like using with the different generations other than what you just described as is not looking at them as a generation, but
yes, yes,
you
yeah.
found some recommendations that you would share with the audience?
One metaphor that I use in my own mind is I'm calling it the highlighter effect. And it's really what
Mm,
you just said, but it's a metaphor. So when I read a good book, I use 4 different highlighters. One is for
wow.
stories, so I can find a story really quick when I go
Mhm.
back to it a year later. One is for
Smart.
data. Yeah, one is for quotes. You get the idea.
Yeah.
I
I love
believe
it.
each of the 4 or 5 generations at work are like a different highlighter. They underscore
Mm,
something I might miss unless those millennials showed me or
mhm,
that Gen Zer showed me. And so
mm,
I need to welcome the yellow, the green, the blue, the different colors that they bring
mhm,
rather than going, nah, yellow's my color. Well, it may be, Bob, but but you need green and blue, and others as well.
mhm.
So I always recommend reverse mentoring.
Mm,
It's my
I love
favorite
that.
thing that I do now. Yeah. So it's where an older or younger colleague, older and younger colleague get together. They
Mhm,
swap stories. You always find something in common when you swap stories. But then you each take turns pouring into the other out of your superpowers.
mm.
So we who are older than 40, can I say that here?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Will have some experience that's very valuable to a 22-year-old. But then if we can take off that mentor hat and put on the mentee hat and say,
Mhm,
tell me the latest app you just got on your phone. How could we use that to market better or monetize
mhm,
something better? I don't know if you know this, but Gen Zers, 1 out of 8 Gen Zers, many of them are kids, they're students, have monetized social media.
amazing.
And 20% of those who monetize it, it's a full-time job. They're on their phone and it's a full-time job. That's something I don't quite understand, but I could sure use that. So
Yeah.
I want to recommend to listeners right now, find a Gen Z, find somebody in their 20s or teens, meet with them for coffee and have them mentor you as well as vice versa.
How do you find that Gen Zs actually will go out and want to find somebody to mentor them, or do you think that we in the older generations need
Yeah,
to really
yeah.
go find them? You know what I'm saying? Is
Yeah,
it?
I do, I do. It really depends on the personality. As you well know, we have different personalities and strengths. You're the queen of
Mhm.
that, so you know that. However, take that away for just a minute. I actually think, well, I don't think I know. I just did loads of research, quantitative and qualitative research and focus groups. And I discovered they really do want mentors.
Mm,
In fact, they're not so loyal to institutions, but they are loyal to people who build a
interesting.
relationship with them. Yeah. So in other words, I have authority not because of my badge, but because of my bridge that I built with them to them, and I begin to build trust, and I begin to earn loyalty because they know I care about them and love them. That's huge, and I don't know
Mhm.
if a lot of companies out there that feels weird. What do you mean? You love them? What are you talking about?
No.
Absolutely. I think if I'm 22 and I feel my boss loves me and cares for me, I'll go to the mat for her or him
Mhm.
because I feel that. So anyway, I'll stop there, but I do think
No.
they want it. Yeah.
I think that is so powerful. There's another thing I want to bring up, and it's the anxiety, the emotion
Yeah. Yeah.
of this generation. In your research, I mean, you hear all kinds of books out there and things coming
Yeah.
out about
Yeah.
the anxious generation,
Yeah.
and I don't like it when I hear labels on
Yeah.
people. And I think you're doing a lot to help um, open up the hood on what the
Yeah.
Gen Z needs.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing in this area of emotional recognition
Yeah.
and
Well, they're the first generation that we as educators said you can talk about your emotions. So SEL has become a big topic, social emotional learning in schools. However, I think that the introduction of the smartphone, among other things, just ambushed us, and
Mhm,
mental health became an issue, and mental illness became normalized. Anxiety,
mhm.
depression, panic attacks, disorders. Uh, Dana, I get on some campuses, they cannot keep enough counselors on the campus.
Wow.
It's just such a normalized thing. So there's not just for the marginalized over there that have a pitiful home life. Middle class America and affluent America, they're the
Mhm,
new, vulnerable young people. So when they come in, we as leaders need to be very aware that that might be an issue. We need to empathize with it, um, and with their situation. In fact, let me give a quick acronym that might be a good handle for your listeners right now.
yeah.
When I talk about this in the book, and I do talk about mental health, I learned to use an acronym that helps me approach them better than just, "Hey, suck it up, buttercup," that sort of
Mhm,
thing that my generation wants to do.
mhm.
So, the acronym spells ALEG, A-L-E-G. You know how we used to say, "This is the leg you got to stand on?"
Yes.
So, the letter A reminds me I need to start by asking, not telling.
Mm,
I
mhm,
wanna tell them what they've done wrong. I wanna tell them they need to get better and grow some grit and get resilient. But if I start with asking, like, "How are you doing?" or "What made you do that? I would have never thought about that myself." That
mhm,
makes them feel valuable. I'm asking them questions. What
mhm,
22-year-old doesn't feel valuable when you're asking them questions? The letter
mhm,
L reminds me to listen. It
mm,
does very little good to ask a question if we're not willing to do the work of actually listening. So when I listen, they feel heard. And Dana, that's the number one, request Gen Z has of employments of employment. I want to have a voice. I want to feel heard from day one.
mm,
By the way,
mm,
the letter E is empathize, and that's been a learned skill for me as a male. I had to
mhm,
learn to begin to understand them and say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea," or "My gosh, I bet that made you feel awful when that happened," or "Oh, I'm starting to
mm,
get it now." Those statements, even though they're not magical in their wording, communicate to them they're understood.
mm,
So ask, they feel valued, listen, they feel heard, empathize, they feel understood. Now I get to letter G, which is what I wanted to do from the beginning, which is to guide them. But I've
mhm,
earned my right to guide them, once again, from a bridge, not a
mhm,
badge. It wasn't my authority from my position, it was my earned authority through relationship. this is going to be one secret to dealing with the mental health issues that Gen Z has.
That is so powerful. I love that you put that into an acronym. And I think leaders have so much on their plate in the new workplace right
Yeah,
now, not only managing their own well being
yeah,
through
yeah,
change,
right.
but managing these different generations. And that's a whole new thing that just came up, the whole well being
Yeah,
at work.
yeah,
And how do you know when somebody's needing that? So I love
mm,
a leg, that acronym.
yeah,
I think that's great. So, I'm a futurist and I like to always think about the future. What do you see for this generation right now? And we didn't talk about this earlier, but what year are they born? What were the
yeah,
years for the Gen Z?
yeah. It depends on who you read, whether it's Pew Research or Gallup or whatever, but right about the turn of the century, late 90s into the 2001 or so, that's when we pivoted from the millennials to the Gen Zers. So essentially, Gen Z has no real memory of the 20th century. So they don't remember Columbine High School, and really they don't even remember 2000, 9/11, on 2001. But they grew up in the shadow of all of those things where
Mm-hmm.
mental health became an issue. And oh my gosh, Dana, I just read the last 3 years, there's been more mass shootings in America than we had days in the year. So this is the world
Crazy.
that's not the world I grew up in.
Mm-mm.
I was trying to figure out where my baseball mitt was. That was my
Mm-hmm.
biggest worry.
Yeah.
So it's a very different day, and that's why empathy is one of the greatest skill sets leaders can bring to the table with their team. Of course, we need to produce. Of course, we need to get results and revenue. But boy, I think we lead with relationships, and the results follow. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think as we think about the future, because these are going to be the future leaders,
yeah,
right, in another 20 years, 15 years probably,
yeah.
because they're all, like you said, on the edge of high school and then finishing up college or in their early 20s
Right,
right now.
right.
So, what do you see for them in the future? What's a future you're trying to hope through writing this book and working with other leaders
Yeah.
that you hope this generation can bring into the culture, into where we are today?
I actually asked that question in my focus groups, and I think I got 11 really interesting insights into the future.
Really?
We don't have time for all 11, but let me give you a few. One of them you'll love as a strong leader yourself. They all said, boys and girls, men and women, we're going to see far more women in leadership than we've ever
Mm,
seen before. And women will take a little bit different approach, I think, maybe in reaction to some of the power gaps that have been created.
mhm,
But think about it. Right now, colleges are full of more females than males right now.
mhm.
So that's not good or bad, it's just a reality.
Right,
So and a college degree doesn't always make you the leader, but it makes you more
right.
positioned for leadership. So women
Mhm.
in leadership. Gen Z said, oh my gosh, I want to know how you feel about this one. They said shortcuts are the new work ethic.
Mm,
I know. Well, that made me kind of bristle, but then they explained it's not that we don't have work ethic. We just believe working smarter more than harder is the way to
mhm,
go. You and I would agree with that.
mhm.
So the older generation,
Absolutely.
grandma and grandpa would say, just work hard on the farm.
Yeah.
They would go, well, if I can get to the same result in 5 hours, not 8 hours, isn't that what
Mm,
we want, Mr. Boss or Miss Boss? Of
mm,
course. So that was a huge one. 4-day work weeks, which doesn't
mm,
mean they want to work less. It means they want to bundle time. So they have 3 days, perhaps every 7 days, to do whatever, and it will be whatever. Okay. But I got an earful of really amazing, interesting ideas from these entrepreneurs. And by the way, let me just add one thing: 72% of high school students in America want to be an entrepreneur.
that's crazy.
72%. It is 7 out of 10. Now, they're not all going to succeed, but
Mm-mm.
just that predisposition to want to start something, not just join something, should make us build our businesses a little different. Could we have those zones like we talked about, where it's entrepreneurial,
Mhm.
established workplace? I think we need to do that.
That's so it's funny because I wasn't thinking about the title of your book, by the way, which is now out and it's called The
Yeah.
Future Begins with Z.
Yeah.
Why did you pick that title?
Sorry.
No, that's
I just decided I had to cough.
No, good.
Um, I decided on the title, The Future Begins with Z, because number one, I felt like many of us were thinking they're just an extension of the millennials. And I think they're a distinct cohort from
Mhm.
the millennials. But number two, I think we need to realize they are the future. In
Mhm.
other words, there's a whole lot we don't understand about the future. But I know one thing, Gen Z is going to be there, and I may not be. So I need to do everything in my power to be generative, which is Eric Erickson's term for pour into the next gen behind you, get them
Mhm.
ready. When I think about Washington, D.C. right now, Dana, in all due respect
Mhm.
to our Congress and Senate and everything else, it's old people,
Yeah.
in their 70s. And I'm going, why haven't you let go and mentored
Mhm.
somebody who's 51 or
Yeah.
48? So I think I need to be preoccupied with really pouring into them and making sure they're ready when it's time. Yeah.
And so what's after this generation? Is that alpha? Is that what
Yep.
what they call it?
Generation Alpha would be the younger children behind Gen Z. Uh,
Okay.
they are growing up in a world not just of smart technology, but of AI. That will be normalized. In fact,
Mm.
catch this little tidbit here. This might whet the appetite of your listeners.
Yes.
Alpha Gen kids, when they're adults, will interact with robots as much as humans.
Mm.
I know. I don't know
I
whether
believe it.
yeah, I do too. I do
I
too.
see my grandgirls,
Yeah,
talking on their mother's phone and asking AI
yeah,
questions all
yeah,
the time now.
yeah,
And I'm like, or they'll come to my house like I have an Alexa and start
yeah,
talking to Alexa. I'm
yeah,
like, I don't have an Alexa. You don't talk to
yeah,
her here.
yeah.
But yeah, they want to talk to things.
It's true.
Yeah. So in robots. So interesting.
Yeah, very.
Tim, I want to thank you for this deep work you're doing. And I love your passion for each of these generations. As we get ready to close out, and I hope people will run and go get your book. It's a great gift for Christmas. Great gift as we think about this time of year. But is there anything that is coming onto your heart or soul right now that I didn't get to ask you that you want to make sure this audience hears from you about this generation?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Thanks for asking. I think Gen Z needs to be led, probably like all young generations need to be led, with high expectation and high belief.
Mm,
Two different cousins. High expectations without high belief feels harsh,
mm-hmm,
but high belief without high expectation feels hollow. You say you believe in me, but
mm-hmm,
you don't really expect much of me.
mm,
So I think we need to enter really believing and expecting. So I want to tell you a story that I share in the book early on, but it's such a great story and a memorable one for me. When my generation, the baby boomers, were young, way back in the 1960s, NASA accomplished something that we had never accomplished before. In fact, nobody had. We put a man on the moon.
mm,
July of 1969, we remember
mm-hmm.
reading the stories of Neil Armstrong
Yeah.
and Buzz Aldrin walking on the moon. Well, that happened because years earlier, JFK, our president, had made two speeches back in
Mm-hmm.
61 and 62 saying, before the end of the decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. Well, when he made that statement, Dana, we didn't have the technology to do such a thing. I mean, that was just absurd. So NASA starts getting all this brand new technology from MIT and other places, where they can get it.
Sure.
But because they were obtaining new tech, those 48 and 51-year-old operators didn't really know how to
Mm-hmm.
use it. And so, who they looked to? All the interns that had just come out of MIT and Purdue and Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the 20 somethings that really were savvy and intuitive about this. So NASA flip flopped during the 1960s. When we put a man on the moon, the average age of those operators at the control center, 27 years old. In
Crazy.
fact, the young man that actually said go, not no, to put Neil Armstrong on the moon, 23 years old. Jack Garman, 23, 1 year
Wow.
out of college. The older generations that were over 40 or 50 were called sim soups, simulator supervisors. They acted as coaches and mentors for those 20 somethings that were in charge of that great endeavor. Doesn't that fire up your
It does. It fires, it really, and I think as we look at this younger generation, I like to talk to people about putting a virtual board of directors around them.
Mm.
I'm going to make sure my virtual board I get some
Yes.
Gen Z because they're going to help me think of things. My daughter's my millennial and she
Yep.
reverse mentors me.
Yep.
And I've got my mother who's 90 who's asking me how she can help with the book launch, and I'm going to put her to work too.
Good.
But
Good for you.
then I need one of those Gen Z people at my table,
Yes,
um,
I agree.
and that
I
is
agree.
thinking differently for me so
Yeah.
that I can help. So you're really inspiring me to think about that differently now. And I
Good.
love that
Yeah.
story. I
Yeah.
think that the expectation and the belief and having
Yes.
both of those at
Yeah.
high speeds. Oh my gosh, we could go forever, but we have to close out. So, Tim, tell our audience the best way that they can reach you and how to get your book and all that good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, the best way to reach me if you want to interact or get something from me is my name, timelmore.com. So timelmore.com. And then the book is anywhere books are sold, but the future begins with z.com will take you right there. And then you can order from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, wherever.
Awesome.
Future begins with z.com. I am excited about it. I just believe we've got to do this. We can't get this wrong. We've got to get this right. So thanks for having me on your
Yes. Well,
show.
thank you for all the research and work that you've done behind this and how you continue to live out this passion. I can't wait to see in another 5 years what Alpha is going to bring.
Yes,
So,
me too.
but
We'll
we'll have
talk
to get on
again.
those. But
That's right. Absolutely.
thank you so much for being here and for sharing such wisdom today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, Dana.
What an incredible conversation. Remember, everything you need to lead with greater impact is already within you. You don't need to be more productive. You need to be more you. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe and share it with a fellow leader who's ready for their internal revolution. And if you want to dive deeper for these concepts, grab a copy of Internal Revolution, Lead Authentically, and Build Your Personal Brand from Within. It's on Amazon. And if you're ready to discover what's possible when you lead from the inside out, I'd love to create a space for that conversation. Head to danawilliamsco.com for your resources and to book your free discovery call, where we can explore what you want to achieve for yourself, your team, and your organization. Until next time, keep leading from within.